My research career can be characterized as a divide. There's my research prior to moving to St. Louis, and there's my research after I arrived in St. Louis. I've lived there for 13 years. So let me take you on a journey pre-St. Louis. Like many of you, I was an undergraduate majoring in a quantitative field, rewarded for every mathematical miscegenation, constantly given positive feedback about this journey related to the mathematical sciences, economic science. It was an exhilarating time for me as an undergraduate. I was chosen to be an undergraduate TA for a math course, and I tutored economics and math, and I never had anybody come for economics. They always came for calculus or linear algebra or whatever the subject. And I really loved it. At the time, I knew about God, but it wasn't central to me. This math thing, this science thing, that's what's going to change the world. And I decided I was going to move from the Midwest to the South after undergraduate school and move to Dallas, Texas. At the time, the telecommunication corridor wannabe of the world. Massive companies dealing with engineering in the northern sector of Dallas. I became involved in that world and actually decided I wanted to teach math, which was strange because I did major in education, but it turns out if you know a little calculus, they'll let you in. And I took a job at a secondary school in Dallas, and I had assigned to me as a 21-year-old 150 young people. Wow. Yes. Wow. 5 sections, 30 apiece, 35, 40. But early on, I had almost 200 kids. I ended up with about 125, 130 by the end. And so I go to the chair of the department and say, I have all these kids. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And he said something to me I won't forget. It was a motivator. He said, don't worry, wait. They'll be gone after 3 or 4 days, and you won't see them again. My classes were as follows: Fundamentals of Math 1, Fundamentals of Math 2, Consumer Math 1, Consumer Math 2, and Life Skills. They all used the same book. Stein Refresher Mathematics. It had a 1959 copyright. The students in my class were largely African American or black, Hispanic, or white and poor. And I did the very best I could to teach them arithmetic in high school. And at the end of the year, like most organizations, I had an evaluation. And I sat down with the principal. Because I had come from an economics background, I thought evaluation was two-way. That was a mistake. I said, I don't understand why in a school in the middle of the telecommunications corridor, in one of the finest neighborhoods in this community, that I had 150 kids, largely black, Hispanic, or poor and white, who were in an arithmetic class. Many of them the last course they're going to take, knowing what I knew because of my love of science and math, that their life course had been set. And he said to me, as plain as I'm sitting here looking at you right now, that's all they deserve. And I said to him, if that's all they deserve, then send me somewhere else where I can teach very small kids who really should be learning arithmetic, the appropriate level of subject matter. And he did. And I ended up the next year teaching a group of 4th, 5th, and 6th graders algebra using the Socratic method. It was an amazing experience. We were a cult, if you will, of people just like me. They loved math, they loved science, and we drilled one another and grilled each other night after night with questions to teach our classes. I'll tell you about one of them. I'm doing the class and I'm asking question after question, and a little girl raises her hand and she says, "I know who Socrates was." I'm like, whoa, right, okay. Well, who is he? He's a philosopher and he talked too much, so they killed him. Now, I tell you this story for a reason. I wasn't a researcher yet, but it informed my research. I decided I was going to dedicate my life to a question. The question was, what are the configurations or portfolios of programs, policies, and practices that will provide traditionally underserved students in urban communities real opportunities in math and science? It's a precursor to really what Bob Moses has talked about. I viewed math and science as the civil right, and that if anyone could do this, that they would have unique opportunities in the fabric of our global economy. And that's all I really wanted. And I was determined to do that. And I spent my career thinking about solutions to this at scale. Because you have to think about this. I had 150 kids. But there was another teacher with another 150. And across the other schools in Dallas, there were many, many others. There were thousands upon thousands of kids just in Dallas in the same situation. And then as I thought about this, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Detroit, LA, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, all over the country, this was the most pressing question that I could put my mind to. It literally drove me crazy. Because you're talking about an instrumental solution in the context of a massive set of political regimes that my colleague just alluded to. There was no one answer. And this was really hard because I was in math and there's always one answer. But in the context of the politics and the like, there wasn't ever one answer. And I will say this, and I'll make it simple. Every person deserves a great teacher. And one of the questions is God involved with that? I don't want to be flip. We've been asking that question about giving kids great teachers for a long time. We simply don't have the will to give every kid a great teacher in America. We don't. Because if we did, it would have happened already. And so I could go on about the solutions we came up with over time, but I won't, because I want to get to what happened after I moved to St. Louis. I made a decision after my early work that so much was happening in the schools related to the kids' developmental issues, the psychology of living in these stressful communities that we have created. I was going to do something different and get involved with public health and epidemiology. And so I spent 13 years documenting, using geospatial techniques, everything that was going on in St. Louis with respect to health, education, economics, housing. It was me taking all of my math and science and putting it in maps to show people in that community, you know, what the heck is going on here? And then, on a day in August, just a couple years ago, the news breaks that a young man is shot in one of the very communities that I mapped. I feel nothing. All around me is chaos, fire, rioting, pain, fear, suffering. I can't feel. Quantitative research is wonderful. You're trained to not have emotion. You're trained to just crank out the number. But I'm haunted. Why don't I feel? So I put my maps away, all the indicators and the data sets and everything. And I go to one passage in the Bible that really has been the driving question of all of my research. It's in Luke. Whether you've read a Bible or not, you've heard of Good Samaritans. And it's the parable related to the Good Samaritan. There are two important questions. The first one, asked by a lawyer, is what must I do to have eternal life? A second question emerges because he answers it. Love God with all your heart, all your soul, everything you got, just give it all. And love your neighbor as yourself. The lawyer seeking to justify himself says, but who is my neighbor? I'm going to tell you all, that's when I became a scholar. PhDs, master's degrees, whatever, because as I looked at the question again, not with maps, not with GIS, not with epidemiology, I had to ask myself, what is this question about? And why is this question, who is my neighbor, so important? And if you have a chance to just look at it, historically, that neighbor question had always been answered, that your neighbor is someone just like you. It was the context of a Jew asking a Jewish person. They had been taught, there's archaeological digs of it, that they had always answered that question, is someone just like you? And this radical parable and story unfolds where a Samaritan, a half-breed ethnic person, demonstrates truly the love of a neighbor. Because the neighbor, by definition, is someone you could do good for. There's two prevailing definitions. Someone who lives close to you and is like you, and someone who you can do good for and love. I realized all my research had been focused on the first definition. Who's near you? What are they like? What are the demographic characteristics? Everything. I could tell you everything about that community. But I had not explored my own feelings about who should I be loving? Who should I be doing good for? And what should be driving that? That's when I really became a scholar. That's when it became real to me. It might be hard to believe if you read anything I've done. But the fact of the matter is, I needed to love Michael Brown, not just document him. I needed to love the police officer, not just loathe him. I needed something different to do that. there was no academic book that was going to take me to that space. So you ask about solutions. I believe research provides us wonderful instrumental notions that we could apply in public policy. I feel as though I could wax eloquent with anyone about what those policies might look like. I'm good at spending other people's money. But you will not get to the point where you will even view that it's important to use the resources of this country to help your neighbor unless you value them and love them as humans. So I am hopeful. You asked me if God has to be a part of it. I tried it without it. I came up with pretty darn good solutions, but I think I fell short. And it's when I've tried to do it in another way, where I seek wisdom, counsel, prayer, and a biblical frame. I think, for me, that's where the hope is.